In 1979, a rare comet blazed across the sky, signaling an ominous prophecy. The Pope, deeply troubled, discovered a foretelling that a child would be born destined to become the mother of Satan's child. This child's offspring would bring about the end of days at the dawn of a new millennium. Alarmed, the Pope instructed a priest to locate and protect the child. However, a high-ranking cardinal argued for killing the infant to prevent the prophecy from unfolding. The Pope, steadfast in his faith, refused, declaring it a grave sin to harm the innocent. The prophecy, he reminded them, urged faith above all else. Hours later, a baby girl fitting the prophecy was born. Her parents named her Christine York. Unbeknownst to her family, a group of Satanist nurses at the hospital secretly abducted the infant, taking her to the basement. There, they performed a dark ritual, dripping venomous snake blood into the baby's mouth and declaring her the chosen one to bear Satan's child. They then returned her to her mother, leaving no trace of their sinister act. Fast forward to 1999, just days before the new millennium. In New York City, an earthquake heralded Satan's arrival. He entered the city, choosing a powerful banker as his vessel. Possessing the man in a restaurant's bathroom, Satan emerged, kissed a woman passionately, and left. Moments later, the restaurant exploded in a fiery blast. The next day, Jericho Cane, a former NYPD detective turned hardcore private security contractor, was assigned to protect the possessed banker. Haunted by the tragic loss of his wife and daughter to a contract killing, Jericho had become an alcoholic weighed down by grief and guilt. Together with his partner Bobby, he received instructions from their headquarters and tracked the banker to his location. While on duty, Jericho spotted a shooter aiming at the banker. Acting swiftly, he shoved the banker into a car, saving his life. Despite taking gunfire, Jericho's bulletproof vest protected him. The chase led Jericho and Bobby to a rooftop, where they pursued the assailant by helicopter. Jericho descended on a rope, catching the shooter mid-escape. However, the assailant pulled a gun, forcing Jericho to let him go. The chase continued into an underground railway, where Jericho cornered the man. The shooter revealed himself to be Father Thomas, a priest. He claimed his actions were to prevent the apocalypse, warning that the 1,000 years had ended. Before Jericho could process this, Thomas fainted. Searching the priest's belongings, Jericho found an address tag and turned Thomas over to the NYPD. Detective Marge, a colleague, informed Jericho that Thomas was mute, leaving Jericho stunned. The priest had spoken to him earlier. Determined to uncover the truth, Jericho and Bobby followed the address to Thomas's apartment. Inside, they discovered blood-written symbols on the walls and a preserved tongue in a jar. Hidden within another jar, they found a photograph of Christine York. Marge and another officer arrived, revealing that Thomas had been trained by the Vatican. Meanwhile, Christine, now an adult, experienced terrifying visions warning her that Satan was coming. Confused and frightened, she dismissed them as hallucinations and consulted her psychiatrist, who prescribed anti-anxiety medication. At home, Jericho reflected on Thomas's cryptic warning about the 1,000 years ending. Seeking answers, he consulted another priest familiar with Thomas. The priest spoke of a girl tied to the prophecy, but first questioned Jericho's faith. Jericho admitted he had lost his belief in God after his family's tragic deaths. Elsewhere, Satan, in the banker's body, met with a Satanist doctor to discuss executing their dark plan. Later, Satan visited Thomas in a prison hospital. Using his powers, he hypnotized the guards to gain entry. In a gruesome display, Satan crucified Thomas to the ceiling using surgical tools, leaving behind a chilling message. When Jericho and Bobby arrived at the hospital, they found Thomas's lifeless body suspended from the ceiling. On his back, words were carved declaring that the 1,000 years had ended and Satan had been released. Among the cryptic messages was a clue: Christ in New York. When Thomas's body moved suddenly, a startled officer shot him. Piecing together the message, Jericho theorized that Christ in New York referred to Christine York. Searching her name in their database, they located her address. At the same time, Christine discovered a dead body in her bathtub and screamed in terror. Before she could process the horror, Vatican Knights broke into her apartment, determined to kill her to prevent the prophecy from coming true. Cornered, Christine pleaded for help. The Knights began a prayer, preparing to execute her, but Jericho and Bobby arrived just in time. Hearing Christine's cries, they forced their way in. The Knights opened fire, attempting to stop them. In the chaos, a Knight tried to overpower Jericho, but his determination to save Christine pushed him forward. The battle for Christine's life and possibly the world's fate had begun, with Jericho caught between faith, skepticism, and an unfolding apocalypse. As the Knight raised his weapon to strike Christine, She panicked but found an inner strength. Pushing him away, she grabbed a metal pole nearby and used it to defend herself. Jericho, mustering his strength, shoved the heavy knight down the stairs. The Vatican Knights, realizing they were outmatched, jumped out of the window and vanished, leaving no trace. However, Jericho found a peculiar heart symbol etched on the floor. Among the chaos, he also discovered a toy belonging to Christine that eerily resembled one his late daughter used to have. Before Jericho could piece everything together, the nurse, Christine's supposed guardian, arrived at the apartment. Unknown to Christine, the nurse was secretly a Satanist. Later that night, a satanic doctor ordered the nurse to bring Christine to their temple for a ritual. However, when the nurse saw Jericho guarding the apartment, she hesitated. Fearing Jericho would find their temple, she lied to the doctor, claiming she couldn't complete the task. Meanwhile, Jericho studied the strange heart symbol left by the Vatican Knights. Diving into religious texts, he uncovered their purpose: to prevent Satan's doomsday plan. Just as he was explaining this to Christine, she started seeing grotesque, moving shapes in her apple. She screamed in a voice that sounded like a chicken's cluck. Jericho, initially skeptical, admitted he could see the terrifying vision too, confirming it wasn't just her imagination. Suddenly, Satan arrived outside their apartment. In a twisted act, he urinated on the ground, his unholy pee flowing toward Bobby, who was waiting in a car nearby. When Satan ignited it with a fiery stick, the car exploded, engulfing a portion of the apartment in flames. Jericho quickly grabbed Christine and tried to flee. However, the nurse, using demonic strength, attacked him savagely. In desperation, Jericho slammed her head against a table, knocking her unconscious. But Satan entered, summoning Christine. Jericho urged her to run while he confronted the Dark Lord. In a chilling moment, Satan killed the nurse before turning his sights back on Jericho. Christine and Jericho managed to escape, but outside they were met by Marge and another police officer, both secret Satanists. Marge demanded Christine be surrendered to them, and when Jericho resisted, the officer drew his weapon. Acting swiftly, Jericho shot back, killing both. They fled the scene, but Satan revived Marge, ordering her to hunt them down. On their journey, Jericho questioned Christine about why so many people were after her and why she seemed to recognize the possessed banker's face. Christine admitted she often saw the face in her nightmares, but had no answers beyond that. Searching for clarity, Jericho brought her to a priest. The priest introduced them to a possessed woman who prophesied humanity's destruction and the rise of evil. He revealed a matching symbol on Christine's arm, identifying her as Satan's chosen one. The priest warned that Satan planned to make love to Christine on New Year's Eve to open the gates of hell, unleashing the end of days. He also explained that Satan needed a mortal body to carry out this ritual. While Christine believed the priest, Jericho refused to accept such a grim fate. Determined to protect her, he left her in the priest's care and returned to his apartment. There, Satan was waiting. The dark figure tempted Jericho with a vision of his happy life, his wife and daughter alive, their laughter filling the air. Satan promised to restore this life if Jericho handed over Christine. Despite the emotional lure, Jericho resisted, angering Satan. To punish him, Satan forced Jericho to relive his family's tragic death. When Jericho still refused, Satan hurled him out of the apartment window. Jericho barely managed to grab hold of the ledge, then pulled Satan out the window, sending him plummeting to the ground. Moments later, Bobby, shockingly alive, knocked on Jericho's door. Jericho decided it was time to move Christine somewhere safe. Meanwhile, news of Christine's whereabouts reached the Pope. Fearing the consequences, he instructed the Cardinal and Vatican Knights to protect her. However, their methods were extreme. They stormed the church where the priest was hiding Christine, intent on killing her to stop Satan's plan. The priest protested, arguing that sin couldn't defeat evil. As the knights raised a dagger to strike Christine, Jericho burst in, shooting the weapon from their hands. He demanded they release her and escaped with her. As they fled, Satan arrived at the church, unleashing his wrath. The ground shook violently as he massacred the Vatican Knights and the Cardinal. Outside, Jericho and Christine were ambushed by Satanists. Just when hope seemed lost, Bobby drove up in a car, urging Christine to get in. She obeyed, but as Bobby sped off, Jericho was left behind. The Satanists overpowered him, beating him mercilessly. Satan appeared, tying Jericho to a crucifix-like position. Bobby, now revealed to be under Satan's influence, drove off with Christine. Hours later on New Year's Eve, the priest found Jericho and freed him. Though weakened, Jericho was determined to rescue Christine. He armed himself at a security company's headquarters and tracked Bobby's car to its location. The clock ticked closer to midnight. And Jericho knew the fate of the world depended on what he did next. Jericho follows Marge as she sneaks into an abandoned theater, curious and determined. He trails her carefully, his heart pounding, until he stumbles upon a dark ritual site. Inside, Satanists surround Christine, and Satan himself is preparing to perform a sinister love ritual with her to begin the end of days. Marge suddenly notices Jericho hiding and draws her weapon to shoot, but Jericho reacts faster. He shoots her first, then turns his gun on the Satanist guards, taking them down one by one. Amidst the chaos, Christine runs toward Jericho. Desperate for help, Jericho grabs her and, in a bold move, threatens to kill her to keep Satan at bay. Satan, enraged but calculating, calls out to Bobby, Jericho's once loyal friend who had struck a deal with Satan for resurrection. Satan commands Bobby to shoot Jericho, but Bobby hesitates. After a tense moment, Bobby defies Satan's order. Furious, Satan sets Bobby ablaze, burning him alive in a horrifying spectacle. Seizing the moment, Jericho pulls out a grenade and throws it into the heart of the ritual site. The explosion rips through the temple, engulfing it in flames. He and Christine make a daring escape, sprinting as the inferno consumes everything behind them. They burst onto a nearby rail track, barely dodging an oncoming train. The train screeches to a halt and the driver allows them to climb aboard, but Satan is relentless. He pursues them onto the train, desperate to capture Christine and complete his dark plan. Satan brutally kills the driver by piercing his heart and tossing him off the train. In a desperate move, Jericho detaches their train car from the rest, creating a temporary barrier. Yet Satan leaps onto their car. Undeterred, Jericho, resourceful as ever, launches another grenade. The blast tears Satan's possessed body apart, scattering it in fiery pieces. But Satan is far from defeated. His spirit emerges, more determined than ever, as he continues the hunt for Christine. Jericho and Christine make a break for a nearby church, their last sanctuary. The Satanists give chase but are blocked when Jericho and Christine manage to lock the heavy church gates behind them. Inside, they are cornered. The church trembles as Satan's power grows and he bursts in, setting sacred objects ablaze. The air thickens with fear as Satan reveals his true monstrous form. Satan possesses Jericho's muscular body, forcing him to overpower Christine. He begins the dreaded ritual, but Christine pleads with Jericho to fight back. Her words spark something within him, a flicker of faith. Jericho resists Satan's control with all his might. Summoning his courage, he grabs a nearby sword and makes the ultimate sacrifice. He stabs himself, choosing death over letting Satan succeed. As Jericho's life fades, Satan is cast out of his body, roaring in defeat as he is banished back to hell. The church falls silent. Jericho, with his last breath, sees a vision of his family waiting for him in heaven. Christine holds him close, tears streaming down her face, and whispers words of gratitude and respect for his sacrifice. Jericho dies a hero, his faith and love saving Christine and stopping the apocalypse. The world is safe, thanks to his courage and ultimate act of selflessness. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and drop a like to return for more. Click on the recommendations on the right next to continue your binge. Grab your popcorn, enjoy yourself, and see you soon, my friend.